So a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. My name is Priscilla Liebert Calder. I'm the event coordinator for the NJSBDC at Rutgers-Newark. And on behalf of Dr. Tendai Indoro, our regional director, I would like to welcome you to our webinar on creating your digital marketing plan. For those of you who are not familiar with the SBDC, which stands for Small Business Development Center, we are the premier provider of business training and consulting services to established businesses, startups, and entrepreneurs here in New Jersey, more particularly to those residing in Essex County, New Jersey. We are one of 12 centers in the NJSBDC network, each center being responsible for one or multiple counties. Our center is hosted by the Rutgers Business School and is funded through a partnership agreement between the United States Small Business Administration, Rutgers University, and the New Jersey Business Action Center. The mission of the SBDCs is to help entrepreneurs and business owners start and grow successful and sustainable businesses. And we do this through offering one-on-one business consulting, training, and technical assistance programs. These consulting services are offered at no cost. It's paid for by your tax dollars. For the benefit of those attending today's webinar, audio has been muted, and we will be taking questions via the chat or the Q&A feature here on the Zoom platform. Please feel free to post your questions, and we'll do our best to respond at the end of the presentation. A copy of today's presentation slides, along with a video recording of the webinar, will be emailed out within 48 to 72 hours of the end of this presentation. Before you leave this presentation today, we do ask that you take at least 1 minute of your time to complete our evaluation form at the end. It will pop up for those of you once we get to the end of the presentation, or if you decide to close out. We do ask that you please take the time to complete this. It will help to inform our decisions on which one of our programs will get, we'll continue to offer for 2021, along with what new programs we should look at introducing for next year. So we really would really like to have your feedback on that. It's really important to us. So please feel free to complete that. All right, so it is now my pleasure to introduce to you our presenter for today, Ms. Cecilia Henderson. Cecilia is the founder of WSI Marketing Edge. She's also SBDC consultant here at the NJSBDC at Rutgers-Newark in the areas of marketing, specifically digital marketing. And so we welcome her today to come and do this presentation for us. So without further ado, I'll turn this webinar over to Cecilia.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Priscilla. I just want to confirm you can hear me and that I'm able to share my screen.
Okay, well, we can hear you loud and clear. Let's see if you can.
It's telling me only the host.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not the host.
Well, it made you co-host, so you should be able to share. I can stop. Are you able to share now?
Okay, let me see. I just saw it switch. Hold on, all panelists. So let me share my screen. There you go. Thank you so much.
No problem.
We're here. Get rid of all the dialogues. So thank you everybody for dialing in to hear about creating your digital marketing plan. Priscilla and I were just having a conversation before we started, And I was telling her that, this is marketing planning season. We're now looking at 2021, and we may know what our budget looks like. We got to have a plan. And if you look at any company of, significant size, this is the time of year when we start to think about what's going to happen next year, because the idea is to hit the ground running with whatever you're going to do from a tactical standpoint, on the first day of the year. Now, reality may be a little bit later than that, but that is the ideal. So just a little background on me. I do own WSI Marketing Edge, which is a digital marketing company focused on helping small to medium-sized businesses leverage the internet. But my background, as you can see, is marketing in all aspects, primarily technical marketing with a mix of both B2B and B2C marketing. So I love talking to people about marketing and helping a variety of businesses that are no longer in healthcare with opportunities for growth. So what we're going to talk about today, and I believe this is the first time we've done this particular class. We've got 90 minutes. Reality is that in 90 minutes, we're going to be able to talk about things at a high level. We're not going to necessarily be able to workshop everything, but what we want to do is talk about the importance of having a digital marketing plan. We're going to talk about some of the key topics that are normally included in a plan like this. We'll zero in on a couple of the building blocks of the plan, the things that you really need to do in order to have a robust plan. And then I created an example that will help you understand the thought process, and it's something that you would then carry out for your own business. And then we'll talk about some of the metrics for each major digital component. And metrics are important for a digital standpoint. I mean, as a marketer, I didn't just do digital marketing, but digital marketing is the one area where you have metrics that can tell you things about whether what you're doing is working, or can tell you what you may need to do more of or less of, or what you may need to stop. It is not metrics for the sake of metrics. So you may see more metrics here than you will ever focus on. Based on what you're trying to do, you choose your metrics. These are tools for you. They are not mandates. The other thing is that when we talk about a digital marketing plan, really we're talking about a marketing plan. Digital is a channel, a category or a channel of how you go to your customer. So if you've done a marketing plan before, you'll see that many of the components are components that you would have used before. But when we get into the tactics, our tactics are going to be heavily digital. So there is no change in how we, diagnose and understand our customer and our segment and our market and our universe, because we're talking digital versus not digital, but we may have more data. What I would suggest is that as I'm sharing slides, I can't necessarily see, but at some point I will be stopping and asking about burning questions, et cetera, because that's going to help us craft a little bit about what we do in the future and, how I might be able to pitch what we're talking about here today. I think we probably have a wide variety of listeners or viewers, some of whom have done this before, others may never have done it before. So it's awfully hard to satisfy everybody. So perhaps we can ask some questions. And then the other thing, and Priscilla, I think, will highlight this again towards the end, everybody who participates in this class is eligible to have the type of free consulting for at least an hour based on this class, based on having attended the class. So that's an opportunity to follow up and to dive deeper into a particular area. So digital marketing, I just want to level set. All we're talking about is leveraging the tools of the internet to get your message to your target audience. For, big buckets of activity would be your website, your social media, your email, your advertising, but any other tool that you have that resides in the cloud or on the internet. It could be your customer relationship management system if you're running Salesforce or you're doing HubSpot. Any tool like that is part of what you leverage to get your message across to your audience. Could be an app that you might have created. Just to, level set again, You can see at the top the very many, traditional means of reaching your client, then combined with digital channels. And of course, given the pandemic, the digital has really, really come to the fore. There was already a strong shift happening, but the pandemic has made people realize that, the digital avenue is incredibly important, and getting your act together in this particular area is going to be important to long-term growth and even short-term growth. So the process is almost as important as having the plan itself. In fact, I think it's more important, because when you do a digital marketing plan, a marketing plan of any type, and a strategic plan, you're able to think about your business. And many of us, especially if we're small business owners and maybe we're singlepreneurs, we have nobody else that we work with, this is the time that you think about your business. This is the time where you clarify what your goals and objectives are, and it kind of tests your use of your resources. If you have a team, it's going to say you don't have enough people to accomplish this, or maybe you don't have enough work for the people. How are you going to use your time? How are you going to spend your resources? It can also help to fine tune or hone what you're saying about your business, how you do what you do. It can also, if you, again, have more than one person in the business, guide and direct the activities of your team. I like to say that if you have a good plan, you could decide that you're going to go off to a desert island, leaving the plan behind, and 6 months from now, you come back and the business has progressed if the plan is executed, and that you could have grown your business without potentially your being there. So I guess that's better than my other analogy was, if you got hit by a car, somebody could pick up your plan and be able to move your business forward based on your expertise. It supports setting goals for your business, and then it supports making sure that you're tracking the effectiveness of your activities. So this process is really important, because you could have a plan, but if you haven't really thought about all of the components, there may be aspects of your plan that you really don't want to do, or really should be de-emphasized or stopped. There are a lot of templates out there for a good marketing plan, and I am providing some links here, which you'll get when you get a copy of the plan. Essentially, I like to think of them as a checklist of topics to cover. Not everything that is in a standard template is relevant to your business. The plan is there for you, not for you to serve the plan. So what I mean by that is, if you are a food store, you're going to have different aspects of the plan that are going to be more important to you versus if you are a law practice. So you just need to look at each element and see what it's trying to get you to do before you decide you're just going to blindly fill it in. And so from our standpoint, here's what we need to get the plan done. We need time, and we need to be able to focus. So you got to break some time out of your day, whether it is in the morning or at the end of the day, that is undisturbed, so that you can do this. And this is not a process that should take forever. This is a process that you do have dedicated time for. You don't want to drive yourself crazy, but it is going to take that. There are some classic sections of the business plan, and we're going to walk through that. So the first section is really kind of a general level setting, which is, all right, you got a mission statement. What is your mission statement? It's your vision, your mission as a company, and your values. This is kind of a unifying process. And if you have other people in your business, it helps everybody kind of buy in or understand what it is you're trying to accomplish, and gives them almost a guideline of what's acceptable and what's not for the business. And I'm going to show you some examples, or an example of this, and you may have seen others. This is not an uncommon thing for anybody who's ever worked for another company. You're going to have seen something like this. The other piece is describing fully what business you are in. I'll share something like that with you. And then there's a situation analysis, where you're looking at your own strengths and weaknesses, and then the opportunities and threats, so that we understand, just generally, situationally on one page, here's what we do, here's why we do it, and here's how I think we fit with everything else that's out there. Next section is around your customer or your target market. So if you think about your customers, if you're in a brick and mortar store or you're a law firm or you're an engineering company, you may have several types of customers. And for that reason, then you can benefit from segmentation. So you have different aspects or segments of the market that you serve. And in fact, you may want to develop a buyer persona for each segment. A persona is basically a representation of what that customer is, and you essentially create a fictionalized person, give them attributes that are very typical of the persona or the segment that you're talking about. And that way everybody knows who you're talking about. And then of course, competitive analysis. So we're talking about the market. So there's the customers, and then there are the people who could replace you in serving that customer. So that's your kind of external view in a sense. The next thing is, the classic sections of the plan: price, product, promotion, and distribution. These are the 4 classic parts of marketing. So your product, your definition, as I told you, is really important. Pricing becomes important because you need to understand where you stand relative to your competition. Promotion is how you're going to sell your product, and you may have different kinds of promotion for the different kinds of products that you might offer. And distribution is how you're going to get that product to market. So if you are an e-commerce company, the distribution channel is your website or your e-commerce site. Other people have brick and mortar. Other people are, so your distribution channels are important there. Now, promotion becomes incredibly important here because we're going to talk about digital marketing plan. So let me skip. We're going to set goals and objectives as well. This is another classic portion of a plan. You got to have a goal by each line of business. And what I mean by line of business, it's like a service offering. So for example, if you were a lawyer and you are in family practice, maybe there's a component that is divorce. Maybe there's a component that is custody. I'm making this up, but you could have parts of your business that fall into different buckets, and you want to understand how each of those is going to contribute to your overall revenue. So you could be thinking about sales or revenue, I should have probably said, for each line of business. And then, even how many leads you might get. You could say that that would be a goal. There are all kinds of goals, but those are, kind of big ones. Sales, I'm going to sell X number of them, or I'm going to sell X 100,000 of them. And then leads, I want to generate, 40 leads a month, because I know that I can convert 25% of them to actual paying customers. So when we talk about goals, as I said before, very important, SMART goal setting becomes important. SMART stands for specific goal, a measurable goal, something that is achievable. So for example, if one year a particular part of your business earned $50,000, is it realistic to expect next year it's going to be $5 million, especially if you did nothing different? That's achievable. Is it achievable? Maybe not. It's relevant to your business, and it's also time bound. So when we give a goal or a number, it's got to reflect a period of time. So we generally think in terms of quarters or years when it comes to this. So before we talked about those 4 areas of market strategy: product, price, promotion, and distribution. Where we get into the tactical planning is in the area of promotion, where you start to look at your key initiatives, and you can look at them by the market segment that you're trying to do, as well as what's going on in each channel as a result of your key initiatives, whether that channel is what's on your website, what's going on with your email, what's going on with your social media. All of those could be ways that you're getting to your customer. And then finally, the most classic section of all is the budget. So it's part of the tactical plan, of course, but these things don't happen in a vacuum, and so you need to have a budget in order to accomplish what you want to do. Some things may not cost you anything other than your time or the time of somebody who works for you. Other things you may say, this is something that we need to outsource. The internal expertise is not here, or maybe it is here, but their time is better spent elsewhere. So those are all choices that you make. So now that we've talked about all the things that are in a plan and we've got our nice list of things that are covered, you know, you could say, well, all right, I'm ready to just fill it out. And yeah, you may not be that far away from that, but I think there are some things you need to know. And we're just going to talk about a few of them here. The first is, you know, we talked about what business you're in and why you're in business. That's something that is worth spending some time on. Apologize for the typo. But this mission, vision, and values, particularly if there is more than one of you in the business, you need to level set and align on that. You also need to understand a bit about who your customers are. And sometimes it feels like it's hard. We don't have necessarily all of the data and all of the resources that maybe a large Fortune 500 company does to go out and find this stuff. So you're going to have to draw some conclusions based on what we know and what you're experiencing. So who are your target segments? How do you describe them? What might be their demographics? What are their interests and concerns? What are trends that are impacting your customers? And then, of course, what your product is. You need to be thinking about how that product is defined in the terms your customer uses and understand how they perceive it as being different from anything else that is out there. When I say product, I also mean service here. And then what problems you solve. What does a customer look for when they're looking for your product? Why are they looking for it? What relief do they seek to get, or what result do they seek to get? And then finally, and I shouldn't say finally, another important aspect of this, because we are talking digital, is what is your marketing infrastructure and what's the baseline? So for your digital footprint, you may need to make sure that you understand how you're currently performing today when it comes to programs or initiatives that you may want to do in the future. You need to measure your baseline, essentially, so that you know whether you're moving the dial for a particular audience or a particular product. We'll also think about your competition, who they are and how they compete. There may be trends or changes in how they do business that might indicate that there's something that you might need to do differently. So again, we're trying not to just examine our own business, we're trying to look outside of ourselves and understand and anticipate opportunities that may be down the pike. We also look externally at environmental trends. So these are trends that impact your business. And you know, one of the most obvious ones that we're dealing with right now is the pandemic. Many businesses, as a result of the pandemic, have had to change how they do business. They've changed where they do business. They've changed many aspects. Maybe they've dropped some offerings and picked up others. Think about some of the restaurants that you know, those that were primarily dine-in, those who were successfully able to handle dine out. Maybe they've had to change their offerings a bit. There might be some things that they served before that they can't do very well in a dine out or takeout environment. So all of these things, being able to understand, of course, this is not something that we could have, that is of the norm to plan into a marketing plan, but that is an example of an environmental trend that impacts your business. So yeah, I would not anticipate that every year you need to have a pandemic plan, but that's an example of, you know, externalities that will change the way you do business. The other aspect here would be what's happening from a regulatory standpoint that might impact your business, or certifications or laws that may come into play that may impact what it is you do. So those are the things that you need to know. Now, I want to go back and talk a little bit about this whole business mission thing. And, you know, I've hit on it twice, I'll hit it on a third time. And I just say that it's basically going to help you explain even to others what you do, how you do it, and why you might be different. And, when you think about crystallizing that statement, what do you want somebody to say about what you do? Now, you don't have to have absolutely everything in here, but you need to be able to give an impression. And again, I'm going to walk through an example. You'll see what I'm talking about. It needs to be clear and simple. And I would not lose too much sleep over this, because this is something that can always be refined. In fact, it's an ongoing process in many companies that we look at it to make sure that it is still relevant. 2 seconds. Let me just shut the door. So how we change business here is that we're working from home, and people apparently are walking down the street. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the core building blocks. So we talked about how the plan is organized. What we're going to talk about now is what are some of the components or things that you might do that either go into the plan or support the development of a plan. These things include things like market research. So we talk about understanding customers' trends and, new things coming down the pike. We also talk about competitive analysis. What's going on with the person down the street who does exactly what you do, or maybe they think they do exactly what you do, or maybe some type of replacement technology that could do what you do. We also look at pricing in the same way. We look at it from our point of view and also from the point of view of the competition. We do a SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then another basic opportunity is, or activity is creating the persona that I talked about. These are all activities that underpin development of a good strategy. So market research is one of these interesting areas where it's executed differently depending on where you are, what stage you are in business, the size of your business, the amount of resources that you have. For those of us who have smaller businesses, we don't have the budgets to go out and, spend, a couple of $100,000 understanding the marketplace every year. But we have a lot of resources, and that is we have the ability to ask questions. The main thing that you want to do is validate what you think you know, and you want to test your assumptions, whether it's around your competitors, your actual customers and their needs, what you're thinking about pricing, and even things like, your assessment of environmental trends. And I think the key takeaway thing here is that we may think we know a lot, but we always need to be open to understanding whether or not what we know is still relevant, and whether what we know is correct, and be willing to change based on what we've learned. So if we're not going to pay a third party to do this, or we're not going to pay, the very high end aspect of this, how do we find this out? There are some good sources of information that we already have, especially if we've been in business for a while. We may have our experience doing customer service or having customer interactions, things that your customers tell you. If you are a larger company and you're running something like a CRM or something like Salesforce, you may have interactions in there that you can mine for information about what your customers' interests are, what their concerns are. Of course, if you're answering the phone every day in your business, you may have the frequently asked questions that people ask. They'll, if somebody's picked up the phone to call you, the questions they ask are important to them. So let's assume they're important to many of the customers. There's the opportunity to do internet research, even Googling your competitors, Googling information about the census, because maybe you're trying to understand a customer type that might be nearby you. You need to really understand what the makeup is of where your store is or where your business is located. So you're looking for, publicly available data about the business. Even looking at the news can be helpful. I would say, obviously, talking to customers, we started with that, but talk to 10 of them. Make it an initiative. Make it an initiative to ask them if there's some things that you want to test out. Ask that question to a series of customers. When you start to hear similar themes and those answers, you might have asked enough. So at that point in time, you summarize and internalize what you've learned. So we are not without resources to do the kind of market research that can help us to get more secure and validate, what it is that we think about our business. So now moving into another tool, this competitive analysis. For each part of your business, each revenue stream that you have, you can be looking at who you might be compared to. What are the other options that might be available? And you can look at them in terms of, do they have the same point of differentiation or are they a different point? How will you address this competitors? You can do that same strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats analysis on a competitor that you can do on yourself. And that will help to reveal potentially weaknesses. You can assess their digital footprint. So for your digital marketing plan, you're going to rely on people coming to your website, or you may rely on your social media presence. How does theirs stack up to yours? So lots of different ways that you can look at your competitors and truly understand who the threats are and who you might like to emulate because they're doing a really good job. And there are frameworks, and I'm sharing one here. So basically, you can do this using an Excel file or you just write it out, but essentially you got a number of attributes that you're going to look at and you're going to assess your own business, but then you can assess your competitors. You may not know this for all of your competitors, but it's just something to see, A, what you know, what you don't know, but secondly, where somebody may have a strong advantage over you. And you could almost do this in a red, yellow, green kind of thing. So, if is somebody worse off than you or better off than you? You'd like to see that, you are kind of at the top on all of your attributes. Maybe you're not, but that's okay. And sometimes that does not mean, that all is lost by any means. If you're looking from a digital standpoint, I already mentioned this, but you can actually do deep competitive analysis and understand what your competitors are spending, what their keywords are that are driving customers to them, how much traffic they have. There are many things that you can do. Now, some of these things may not be available to the average consumer. You need to work with a third party because, there are tools that you use in order to identify this. Let's say you don't have the resources for that. So you can still do, as I described before, an assessment that is based on available information. Visit their website, visit their social media pages, and assess the content. Are they posting frequently, or was the last time they posted 2 years ago? So if you're going to make a go of it there, you don't have to worry about them right now because they're not really doing anything. But I would keep my eye out because it could be that they're looking at you just like you're looking at them. But you can then go to their website and say, what's that like? Did it take all day for that page to load? Does it look like it's a current website? You could just kind of basically say, let me grade this on a scale of 0 to 5 versus mine. Just be careful because we always like our own stuff really much. So you want to be objective. And so sometimes it's good to have a team do that and to just decide, well, what attributes am I going to really use to assess this? You can choose your attributes. So now moving on to the other piece that you do a deeper dive in, pricing becomes important. You can do this by your different lines of business, your different business categories. You can even look at your pricing by segment because sometimes people have different pricing depending on what segments they're going after. But you want to look at pricing versus your costs, and that leads you to understand a little bit about your profitability or margin. And oftentimes when I'm working with customers, I'll ask them, okay, what do you want to focus on? And they'll give me answer A. I'm interested in segment A. But when you ask about what's most profitable, it might be something very different. And they may actually have more of an ability to move the dial on the other option. So you want to understand what your business looks like if you should decide that you're going to push something that has certain profitability implications. And here I'm going to now say my disclaimer, I am not an accountant nor a financial person. So that's as deep as I'm going to go in that. Just understand that what you choose can have an impact on your overall bottom line. but pricing has an impact on how you market and who your target is. So, you look at your competitors and understand what your competitors are charging, and then you get a sense of whether you fall into a premium, a mid-market, or a budget range. You also have to look at what you're offering to understand whether or not you can validate your pricing position relative to what you're offering compared to your competitors. See, if you're offering fewer features, but you're charging more, that could be a challenge. So you need to look very hard at the consistency around your pricing versus your offering and what's going on in the marketplace. Now we come to one of the areas that I think is really important, and one where we can do a lot in a short time, but then I think it still requires revisiting. And that is this strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is important because you get to find where you might be able to exploit opportunities and potentially arrive at some growth. So here, when we're looking at strengths and weaknesses, we're looking at only things that are unique to ourselves. They are inside of the company. So if you, let's say, are a shoe company, your strength may be your breadth of offering. I have, many types of shoes. My strength could be that I really understand shoes because I've got 20 years in the business. My weakness could be I really haven't marketed my business. I've lived with word of mouth, but now my customers are dying off. All of this is kind of internally. We have done no marketing. On the other hand, what are the opportunities and threats? These are things that are outside of me that I can take advantage of. So an opportunity might be that people are walking more, and so they have a strong desire for walking shoes. It could be, so something that is not unique to my business, but my business solves. A threat could be that, let's see, what's a good threat here? Might have to make up a threat, but a threat is external to me. Let's say there's some legislation that there can only be green shoes, but yet all of your shoes are blue. So this is something that you can't necessarily control. It could be fundamental. A threat could be a pandemic in the sense that, people can't come to my store. So then that changes how I have to go to market. So you understand that strengths and weaknesses are internal, and opportunities and threats are external. So one of the things that we thought would be worthwhile is to take a moment, just take a couple of minutes and look at your own business. And you're here because you want to do a digital marketing plan, and a SWOT is a part of that plan. What does this mean for your own business? So I know you don't have this in front of you, but if you just take a pen and paper and list out internal strengths, internal weaknesses, external opportunities, and external threats, think about what they are and begin to lay them out. Let's just take a couple of minutes and do that. Unfortunately, it does look like we might have, just looking at, the number of attendees to see at this point too, if there are any questions. So I'm going to look in the chat window, and if you have a burning question about something that has come up so far, this would be a good time to put it into the chat window. And I'm just going to pause here for a couple of minutes while we look at our own internal strengths and weaknesses, and then our external opportunities and external threats, just for a couple of minutes. So I do have a couple of questions that have been entered, and I see Patrice. Hello, Patrice. How long should it take to complete marketing plan? And this is, as I was looking at that, I'm thinking about, situations where I know that it has taken a month to complete a marketing plan. And I'm not talking about a solid month, but it's just been the main focus. But clearly, businesses of different sizes have different resources to allocate. I really think that if you take a couple of days, I am talking about, 16 hours, you could do it in a couple of days, or you could do it over a period of time. I like doing it over a period of time because when I start to work on things, they ruminate, or I don't know what you call it, they marinate. So you have an idea, you've written something down, you may want to come back and revisit it, but you do have to put an end to it. This is not a process that should be taking forever. And again, a plan is a living document. This plan will help you maybe get your budget, but there may be things that happen that you need to change. So I think that for many small businesses, they can do this in a short period of time, but you may spread that time, spread the hours out, hopefully, so that you got that thinking time and processing time in between. So tactics are a separate part of the plan, but they are part of the plan. So you really, the hierarchy is that you have an overall business strategy and a business plan. But then on an annual basis, you're doing this, or, a strategic plan, that is like your big plan. Then your tactics, your annual activities fall out of that. And the marketing plan is an annual activity. So it's an underpinning of the plan. It builds up. So there's always kind of a, as I saw it, an up and down. Sometimes the marketing plan and it can make the business strategy change, but generally speaking, the business strategy drives what happens in the marketing plan. So I think that you can work on your tactics separately, but they are part of the plan. And you work on your tactics separately because maybe and you'll see when I show an example, you can talk at a high level in the plan, but your tactical plan does have to be granular. When are you going to do it? How much is it going to cost? Exactly what you're going to do. So another question that I see is, if I'm helping somebody else develop a plan and I don't know their industry, what can be found to help me know their niche, their audience, their competitors? Well, I mean, again, this is, I was going to say library research, but this is Google research. Google is your friend. Also, your friend is the person who is your contact that you're developing the plan for. They should be able to give you what their good sources are. What are their good sources for understanding their business? What do they use? What things do they follow, whether it's online? What things do they subscribe to? Then check out your local librarian if Google is not listing, because there are publications that talk about size of businesses, etc. So they can be extremely helpful. So I would just turn on all of the faucets to make sure that you are getting all the information that you can. So now I'm hoping that exercise of doing strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats was worthwhile for you. To keep it with you, and then you may add things. You may decide things that you thought were threats are not threats, for example. You may identify far more weaknesses than you'd like to see, or maybe you don't find any weaknesses. Now that would be a little bit unrealistic, I'm telling you, but certainly, you just want to look at this over a period of time. And you can see that it doesn't take long necessarily to do this. That's why I'm saying give yourself a couple of days. But the reality is most business owners are going to be doing this at the beginning of the day or the end of the day where they can do that focus and get that time. So, maybe it's a 2-week period where marketing plan is your focus. So the other thing that I want to talk about is personas. Now, this is not something that we can do in this type of environment, but a persona is an avatar or a representation of each of the segments that you might serve. It's highly detailed. It's considered fictional. If you will, it's a stereotype. So why is this important? It gives you some clarity about who these people are that are your customers. It helps you with communication. It helps you execute your strategy. So when you're in a meeting with other people and you're talking about a particular type of customer, you might not say it's my mid-size organizations that are medical businesses, for example. You might say, what does Bob think? And everybody knows who Bob is. Bob is the CEO of XYZ. He's generally a CEO. He's working with this particular type of company. You'll see what I'm talking about in more detail in a minute. So this brings us to a practical example. So we've been talking a lot about, marketing plan. Here's an example of what the initial process could look like. So think about a company, let's call it Unique Beauty, and they've been in business for several years. They offer hair, makeup, nails, and massage. I apologize to all men in the audience, but this is the example. So trying to grow the business. And they're saying, let's think about who our business is. Well, our mission is to provide beauty and wellness services to our local community, to have women feel more beautiful and more peaceful when they leave than when they came in. And if you think about a vision for our business, we see ourselves as an oasis of calm and beauty, providing refuge to our clients. Now, you think about your major business activities, and I've been talking about something called a line of business or a revenue stream. And this beauty spa, they have 4. They mention hair, makeup, nails, and massage. So they have 4 things that they can be promoting. Now, when you get into your high-level marketing plan, you may say, all right, what am I going to do to support each line of business? So we're getting a little bit tactical here, but we're not tactical enough so that somebody can pick it up and do it. But let's say for hair, they've identified a couple of initiatives. Get more business from local companies with offices in the area. But then they have another thing that they want to do, which is maintain the local client business that they have, the people who live in the area. So they already have significant business from people in the area. They see an opportunity to get more business. And in fact, here they've put that as number 1. Maybe that's an indication that they might prioritize things that involve getting more business than just maintaining. They have a second area, which is makeup, and you can see there's targeting different types of customers. And this is actually a combination of B2B and B2C activity. In nails, they've got some activity that they've highlighted. And then in the massage area, they have more activity that they have highlighted. So when we think about marketing initiatives, those are your high-level initiatives. They've got quite a lot of them. And I might look at that and say, is that too many things? But that's a question that you have to ask. Remember, one of the things of going through this process is that it allows you to test out, do I have the resources to do all of this? Whether it is the time, the money, the will, what have you. So in this particular instance, I'm calling out that one of these areas is new, the area of makeup. Let's say that they hired a new makeup artist. So it's really important for them to really focus on this. So then you could drill down. So for each one of these marketing initiatives or lines of business, you drill down and you can deal with each initiative. So for this one where you've got something new that you're trying to do and you've identified what you want to do, then now we start to look into what are we doing from a digital standpoint to support all of this. So I am making up things here, but you can see how you would then say, all right, I need to leverage these aspects of my digital plan or of my digital footprint in order to make this happen. So with your website, maybe you're creating a dedicated page. So this is a new business. This is a test of, if you're going to do something new and you're living an online life, is that new thing incorporated into your existing website? Because we're sometimes very comfortable with what we have and we haven't really, completed the circle to make sure that we're represented a certain way. Keyword research, because here you're going to need to be found for special event makeup and other similar keywords. So this is part of an SEO initiative, search engine optimization, which is what can bring people to your website beyond other things that you do. Let's say that you are going to incorporate video because you know that video is really important. Here's where, again, you get very tactical. In your email, there are things that you want to do. We even talk about the timing. And then we also incorporate social media. And your social media is going to be driven by who you think you're going after. So, for example, here, if it's special events and brides and things like that, maybe I'm going to be on Instagram and Facebook. But there's this whole prom thing that we talked about earlier. Prom is younger people, so maybe you're going to target TikTok for that reason. So this is that linkage between the upsell current clients, get business from prom season, then translates into, okay, what do I need to do in order to make that happen? And then ultimately, when do I need to do it? And that's what this turns into. So this would be a snapshot from a plan. So let's say this is a focus on wedding planners. So we're launching makeup initiative or something. We're going after the wedding planners. Here's what I'm going to do in all of my digital areas. Here's, detail, and here's when I'm going to do it. All right. Now you take a step back and that turns into your total tactical plan. So remember, we had event planners, wedding planners, prom goers, and other kinds of targets. Each one of those has a plan associated with it. It all makes it into the mega plan. And the mega plan is arranged by month and it's arranged by activity. And that's how you would move forward and summarize it all. So now, let's say they're saying, all right, we've got all of these things, we've got these lines of business, who do we target? We have some indication that we know a little bit about this, but maybe we haven't done all we can do. In this particular instance, the example that I showed you, we have several that have been called out. Local community residents, primarily women. You've got corporate employees, primarily women. So the office park that was built across the street with people who have money, primarily women. Event and wedding planners, you may separate them out. Maybe they're not the same, maybe they are. And then in parentheses, high school proms, because maybe that's an upsell for, existing clients. We're not sure. But in other words, this is something that you try to understand. So what do we know about this? This is where understanding your target comes in. So our local residents, when we look at our local residents, we were able to go to the census and say, all right, my average client generally is younger. We know what their household income is because they live in this XYZ county. We can just even tell the age based on who's coming in here. And so a source for that would be census data. And again, you can say, all right, this is my current or installed base. These are the people that are my bread and butter. I don't want to alienate them. But we got a new segment coming into town, new corporate offices. They are perhaps more resource capable. This is just an educated guess. Maybe we don't know this for sure, but we know the company and we know they pay well. So this is an opportunity potentially. Then okay, if I want to do makeup, for example, which is where these came in, the wedding planners and event planners, a lot of that represents a revenue opportunity. you've got to find sources for them. Do you go to wedding shows? Do you buy a list? Not for the emailing kind, but you want their email, but you want a list. You want to know who they are. Do I go to local venues to find them out? And then who do I want? Do I want people that are doing high end, medium end, or budget? Well, in this instance, maybe we've put the X through budget because we know that our pricing is not budget pricing. So this is an example of how you kind of lay out, all right, these are my segments that I serve, and then understand where we can find more information about them. So this leads us to the ability to develop a persona, which I told you about, which is this kind of facsimile fake profile for your major segments. And you want to be able to answer a lot of different questions, which you can see laid out here. Why do they buy from us? What's their pain? How do they even find us? You know, where do they hang out on social media? What are their demographics? So we already talked about the 35-year-old homeowner who has a household income of, you know, on average 50K, let's say. You can take this and you can kind of deep dive into that person. So in this particular instance, this is a persona profile that has been developed for what they think is their primary customer. These are the clients they already have and they want to retain, because if they lose them, then they even lose their ability to go out and grow their business because this is their core revenue stream. So this woman is that local resident, 35 plus, homeowner with a household income of 55K. Maybe she has 2 children. Well, we know what she needs to know. We can even talk about how this type of person calls and what they ask about when they call. We want to know, she wants to know whether or not we can provide the service. She wants to know whether or not it's quiet and relaxing because she's got 2 kids. So what does she not want? She doesn't want to wait. She doesn't want to pay for poor service. She doesn't want to be disturbed while relaxing. So remember back to the whole vision and mission that we wanted to be an oasis of calm. All of this kind of says, what kind of place do I want to have? What kind of rules, for example? How do I want to do business? Maybe this is a salon that doesn't allow children because she doesn't want to be disturbed while relaxing. So why would she buy from us? Well, because we're local, we're convenient to her home. She knows our name and our brand, and she even knows other people who go here. Knowing your pain is really important. This is a woman that needs to look good all the time. She's got work and family commitments, limited time. And our problem solvers are that we're able to offer multiple services. So we're almost like one-stop shopping. So this is the process that you go through. I want to not forget how we have to emphasize understanding where this customer hangs out, because that will tell you if you're going to do advertising or you're going to do any messaging that is not just because she has our email, where else would we do it? Now, there are other things that you want to incorporate depending on the kind of business that you're in. If you are B2B, you want to make sure that you're taking a look at the challenges that they have based on the roles that they're in. So if you are B2B and you're trying to get through a purchasing agent, you need to understand what is that purchasing agent considering very important to them? What is a win for the purchasing agent? On the other hand, you may have multiple types of buyers within the same company. The purchasing agent is the person who makes the paperwork go through, but maybe you have somebody else who could be more influential, but is less budget oriented. You need to understand what their challenges are. You know, maybe their reputation lives and dies on how well, you perform as a potential vendor to them. So understanding what is going to make that person move forward with your proposal is really important. You then would understand what their most common questions are. And then the other thing that you need to do is understand what red flags are. So in other words, it's if you may have somebody that really fits your profile, but there's one thing that says, all right, we're not going to throw good money after bad or bad money after good. But so let's say that you own a steakhouse and you got a client that fits your persona because they can afford you. They're right in your neighborhood. They're very, image conscious, but they're a vegan, okay? This is a red flag. It's not always going to be that overt, but you may have developed them over the years. So this is something that you can put in your persona as an aside, but the persona really is, who are you speaking to? So you can look at your activities, again, back to the tactical plan. So we have initiatives, but we also can look at this a different way. You can take many cuts at what a tactical plan looks like. So you can do it by persona or avatar or customer type. So here's a list of activities that you might do in order to make Serena a much more loyal person, creating a loyalty program or referral program. All of these things are things that are surrounding Serena. Within that, you may be messaging different things at different times. You might be talking about nails, you might be talking about massage, but this is the mini marketing plan for that particular segment, if you get my drift. So when it comes to what are we going to say, there's something called, I call it a core messaging or source messaging document. This is what, we've done for some customers, where we basically put everything that we can be communicating about so that there's no confusion. But then for Serena, we select out certain things because of who they are. So you can create a document like this, and it makes it very easy for you to communicate. It contains critical messages about each of your services, and it's a source for promotional messaging even. If you ever outsource your messaging or your blogging, this is a great tool that you can use to ensure that there's alignment with, organizational alignment. Put all of your important facts. It's not something that you'd ever hand a customer. This is an internally focused document, but it can save you a whole bunch of time. Now, we're going to look at your content plan. So now that we've talked about what it's like to be doing messaging her, and you've got a core messaging document, you can talk about what and when you're going to say it. So with your targeted segment and initiatives, we're talking about what and when do I need to tell Serena relative to the initiatives that I need to complete. What's going on with seasonal activity with regard to her? What's going on with special events? What's going on in terms of your own internal strategy about what you want to emphasize? Finally, we can look at a sample framework. Here's what you can do to kind of lay out what kind of messaging you're going to do when. Now, this is a totally different example, but you're laying it out by year, you're laying it out by channel along the side. So whether this is your website, an email, a newsletter, what you're going to do on social media, this is what this does for you. It gives you that kind of vision about what needs to happen when, and then you almost count back executionally to say, when do I need to start talking about this? Now, the last thing we want to talk about is measuring success. And metrics are a really tricky thing. You want to really select the ones that mean the most to you. And sometimes it might depend on the business that you're in or on the specific initiative that you have undertaken. But you can do this and currently understand how you measure up. So basically what you need to do is deal with identifying a baseline for any metric that you've just chosen to follow. And then you want to set goals that make sense. Remember, that's SMART. Well, of course, because we're talking metrics here, it is measurable and you have a built-in time frame. The issue is making sure that they make sense. Are they achievable? So website metrics that you might want to consider. There are some technical metrics that you need to think about. Now, no, it's not about communication, but it is about making sure that your customers stick with you. So page load time, pages per second are really important. So page load time is how long does it take when you go to your website for the page to actually render? We know that the average consumer expects it to take no longer than 2 seconds. You actually see a drop-off curve of how many people leave when it takes longer. So there are technical aspects that you want to look at with your website in terms of ease of use. We're not really going to heavily focus on that, but I just want to make sure that you're aware of it. The other thing that you can look at on your website are things like pages per second. We know that people generally spend 2 to 3, they look at 2 to 3 pages per visit on average. It's not a page through the website from start to finish. And that's important because depending on your initiative, if you've got a landing page that you've created or a page that relates to a particular service, understand that it needs to be absorbed fairly quickly. And that, they may spend no more than 3 minutes actually on your website. That's not a bad thing. Now, I'm often asked, okay, well, what is the right number? Well, it really depends. If you've got an e-commerce site, you would expect your dwell time or the time on the page to be longer. If you're doing training or you have a lot of videos that you think are really driving your business, you would expect that time would be longer. You can look at the kind of devices people are using to come into your website. You can look at just the total number of visits, the organic visits or organic traffic. This means people that just came to your website because they found you in the results when they entered a term into Google. That is different from paid traffic. So what's your baseline organic traffic? How many people are coming to your website? Will that change based on what you're doing? You can even look at, specific pages. So down here at the bottom, top pages. So let's say that you've launched a new initiative and you've promoted a particular service and you've provided a link to a page on your website. You'd like to see that start to come up. So it's impractical for me to actually say, oh, there's a number for this. But you might want to start to see a page register as being a more frequently visited page. And you would see that over time as you look at your monthly data, your Google Analytics. If you have a key download or action that you're asking people to take, that is something that you'd be tracking. And then finally, if you're an e-commerce site or you're selling a webinar, for example, purchases or what we call conversions are going to be really important. So so that's why I'm saying for your metrics, you want to make sure that you're measuring things that are relevant for your own business. So if you're not e-commerce, if I'm not e-commerce, I'm not going to be even thinking about purchases. It's not even a capability. If I have nothing to download, downloads are out. But I'm going to be very interested in my traffic. I'm going to be interested in my bounce rate. The bounce rate is how many times somebody came to your site and then decided that they were in the wrong place and left. So you select your metrics based on what you are trying to do. You may have different website metrics for different initiatives, but you can collect all of this information. It's just a matter of what it means, right? We do want to talk a little bit about this just to understand that SEO can drive your website's functionality and your website's visibility. So your domain authority, which is how important Google thinks your website is, becomes important, and you can measure that. Your page authority, same deal. How authoritative is the page? Do other people link to it? Do other people refer to it? You can look at how you're performing versus your competitors on different keywords. You can look at how many people, again, link to your page versus somebody else's. You can look at how many people click on your page when your page shows up in the search results. And then, of course, there's technical aspects. I call out specifically load speed because if your speed is very low, or not very low, but if it's longer than 2 seconds, it's a negative from a Google standpoint, and they will deprioritize your site because Google wants their customers to have the best experience, and the best experience is not waiting for the site to load. So just understand that these metrics aren't necessarily driven, there's a couple, keyword in particular, but most of them are not driven by any particular initiative, but they can impact everything that you do. Now, social media metrics. Obviously, the biggest thing that you're trying to do with social media, aside from sell something, is to get people to engage with you. But you can look at things like followers or connections on LinkedIn. You can look at likes, You can look at click-through rate, how many people click through from my social media site to my website. And you can, some of this, again, is driven directly by your initiatives. If you are posting about something and it's a particular season, maybe you see that there's more engagement. So that means there's more interest in that particular offering than another offering. So it's very much driven by what you're doing. The other thing that you can look at that I think is really important is looking at what perceptions are expressed. There's reputation, any kind of reviews that are put on social media, they become a good metric. If you're getting new reviews and those reviews are good reviews, or not getting any reviews when you had been getting them before, you're looking for changes and trends. Email, obviously you've got how many people open your email, how many people click through from your email to something that is on your website, how many people came to your website and left because maybe the email might not relate to where you took them. You can look at people who subscribe and people who unsubscribe. I wouldn't be upset, by the way, if people unsubscribe. You're constantly adding to your email list. And if they are not your target audience, they will unsubscribe. And that is a good thing. But you should look at your email list and make sure that you don't have people that you've been emailing to that you have never seen open your emails. So maybe they didn't unsubscribe, but they never open your emails. So they're not your target. Finally, we look at ads. So ads can, whether or not you are doing online advertising, whether it is on Google or whether it is in a social media environment, click-through rate is important. And your click-through rate varies by type of business. So like if you're just a general professional services business, your click-through rate isn't that high. I mean, it could be 3% of the time. It also depends on how competitive your business is, you know, in the particular market. Your cost per click obviously varies by the competitiveness of the keyword. So if you are doing pay-per-click, cost per click becomes very important because you're paying every time somebody clicks on a keyword. So if a keyword is highly desirable, highly valued, and it's $10 a click or $20 a click, that's what you'd get for maybe lawyer in New York City. You understand it's going to be a high cost per click. On the other hand, there are other keywords where the cost per click could be 50 cents. So we don't have a single metric for you there. But it's important to get a baseline and to understand what that is. Quality score is important. That is, if I click on the ad, how related is where I take them to what I said in the ad. Google gives you that score. Impression share is something like, is my ad being seen all the times that it can be seen? Sometimes you'll have a lower share because your quality score isn't that great, or you're not bidding enough. There are times when you're losing the bid because your budget is not high enough to really participate. You're always looking for a return on ad spend. So if you're going to spend a budget of $800, how many click-throughs did I get and how many of those resulted in actual revenue? So there's a total conversion value to your program. And then of course, if you have call tracking, you'll be able to see who's calling, how many people have called. You can even listen to the calls. So all kinds of analytics are out there for tracking, and they can help you. The reason why you're doing this and you're selecting the ones that are most relevant is to understand whether you should do more or less, what you should tweak. That's the importance of these. So budget is the final thing that we talked about. That was the last thing we talked about on the list. Budget is always a challenge. Why? Because we can always find more ways to, invest our time. Whether it's a time budget or a money budget, there's never enough, right? So you need to prioritize your initiatives. So this is always a common question. How do I deal with the fact that, I have a $200,000 budget and a $50,000 actual check, okay? So I've got champagne the taste, but we're going to be drinking Coke. That's basically the way it is. But prioritizing your initiatives. This can be done based on what you think the return is going to be, the strategic value of that initiative. And then you can even say, I'm going to favor certain channels. So I'm going to make sure that my social media is really strong, no matter what it is, because it's my main outreach. Or I'm really going to invest in the infrastructure of my website. So you can rank within your channel, and you can say, that my website is far more important than my social media. But bottom line is, once you've done that prioritization, then you start to add up the list. And at a certain point, when you reach your budget, you draw the line. And that's always painful, but those are the choices that we have to make. So when you're looking at the marketing budget, if you recall back to the tactical plan, this looks very much like it. You would lay this out and you could say, here is when the spends occur for these initiatives, for these particular channels. So that's basically a high-level marketing plan development. You've got these frameworks that you use. You've got a list of topics that you cover. You're selecting the topics based on what your needs are as a business. So we talked about the role of the plan as kind of an organizing process and a clarifying process for your business. We talked about, what are those main topics that are always in the plan? We talked about the things that underpin that plan. This is the competitive analysis, the personas, the SWOT. And then we walked through how a local business might try to implement something like this. And then we talked about what the metrics might be for each major digital component. So my question to you is, do you have questions? I've been kind of keeping an eye on the chat, but it's been very quiet. Was there an area here that you wish we had gone into greater depth in? I'd like to know that. Okay, well, it looks like we don't have questions. Ah, I see a comment. Hold on one second. Let's see. In regards to emails, I have a list, but not many. But my list is not my target market. Trying to build a list. And I think that's interesting. We all have challenges with that. Sometimes we can use our website to build our email list. And what I mean by that is, if you are trying to build people, and then it will also allow you to segment. So let's say that you're a law firm and you do get visitors to your website. You start by saying, all right, maybe I'm going to have several tip sheets. I'm going to have a tip sheet about how to manage divorce. I'm going to have a second tip sheet that is how to manage elder law issues. I'm going to have a third tip sheet that is around child custody. Anytime they download something, a person should give you their email. You shouldn't have stuff be downloaded without capturing an email, but you're also getting other information, which is what they're interested in. So when they give you the email, you tag them and say that they are interested in elder law, or they are interested in divorce. And that will then drive what your email list content is. So you could have a segmented email list. So this is something that you build over time. So obviously in personal networking, you're always asking if we can add to the list. In your interactions on your website, you can segment it out that way. And you can do the similar thing by offering these things on social media as well. Would that be manual or automated? It depends on what your system is. You can certainly automate something like that, but it really depends on the compatibility between your website and your email or CRM. Oftentimes you can do that because you know what they did, and you can even see when you're looking at your Google Analytics, you'll even be able to know, You might know that you're missing. This is how you know that your that the email box is dysfunctional. You might see people downloading, but you never got the email. That's not good. So I think that you're trying to offer something that helps them to give up something to you. So for example, you might offer a series of free webinars in a particular topic because you're trying to build your list. Because maybe, and this is really important, people who are selling services of higher value, it's not a situation where, you know, they come to the website and then suddenly decide they're going to give you $10,000 for your consultation. What you need to do is you need to bring them down that buyer funnel from total stranger down to somebody who's really seriously considering you. So let's say you offer a webinar that is free in a particular topic. Those people who sign up should be automatically added to your list. So that's important. Well, I'm glad I got your world, Patrice. So it is, you know, you have to offer something to get something, but they should never get something for you from free. And then, you know, it's still worth cleaning your list and making sure that those people that did not respond are not your target. Move on. Other questions? Well, if you have, there's a question, yeah, how should I mark those in the list that are not my targets? You can tag them and say not a target, and you can delete them. It's as simple as that. It's just a matter of how your CRM is working. So if there are more detailed questions, I know we got a little bit more into the email aspect. I see a question coming. I see two words, what can? Well, here's what we'll do. As we said, we do have the availability to do a consult. What CRM do you suggest? Oh, there are many out there. I use ActiveCampaign. HubSpot is considered very good, but it probably is a bit more expensive. There are components of MailChimp and Constant Contact, depending on what it is you're trying to do, that might be totally acceptable. So with that, I think I'm going to ask Patrice to come back in. Not Patrice, I'm sorry, Priscilla. We got two P words. And we'll close out. Yeah, Patrice, I was going to ask you to do the presentation now.
Okay. Thank you so much, Cecilia. If there's, I'm just giving it an opportunity if anyone have any last few questions before I just wrap up. It's now 4:24, so we still have about 6 minutes if there were additional questions.
So I think, yeah, I agree. This is, I mean, this can be a very exciting thing. And as I said before, from a timing standpoint, now is the time to look at 2021. I mean, you can of course do a plan for next week and what you're going to do around a particular event, but give yourself the gift of taking a step back and thinking about what's going to happen in 2021. Always hard to know what's going on with regard to the pandemic and how the response is going to be. And you may want to have kind of a best case and a worst case scenario. One of the things that we didn't talk about here, but is part of a higher level business plan, is scenario planning, which is taking these environmental activities and regulatory things and saying, okay, what would happen if? And then you have kind of the beginnings of a plan. It tends to be people that are more richly resourced, i.e. larger companies that can really do this a lot. But if you've got the time, it's good to know, what would I do in another bizarre situation like we find ourselves in.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Cecilia.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
Okay. All right. So if there's no other questions, I've just put a slide up on the screen for everyone. Cecilia did mention it throughout the webinar, but for those that are in our attendance of today's webinar, you do get a one-on-one consultation. So you will be hearing from us. If you want to schedule that a little bit sooner, you can feel free to reach out to us. Obviously, due to the pandemic, we're not in office, so we're not at that location, but you can give us a phone call at 973-353-5950 or send us an email at rnsvdc@business.rutgers.edu. Or the best option is to visit our website at www.rnsbdc.com. Sorry, RN for Rutgers-Newark, sbdc.com. And on the top of our website, there's a button there that says request counseling. And once you fill that out, you will be put into sequence where we will follow up with you and assign you a consultant to have a one-on-one. Some of you may be out of our territory, which is Essex County, but because you did attend the webinar, we still honor that one-on-one, but future consultations may have to be with your local SBDC. And also, as I mentioned before, I will be sending out a copy of this presentation along with a video recording if anyone needed to replay it. So I'm just doing one last check for any questions and then we'll end. I would like to say thank you to Cecilia for another informative webinar. You're on a roll. This is webinar number 2. Along with the usual mainstays that we have on our program. So I think later on this week, we have engaging the ideal online customers. So for anyone that's interested in how to better target your customers, please feel free to sign up for that webinar in which Cecilia will be teaching. And you can do that by visiting our website at www.rnsbdc.com. Click on the training tab and you'll see a list of all our events. So with that said, I will close today's webinar. It was great having everyone here and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.